Welcome to Shadows and Crimes podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving deep into a case that, well, it's remained etched in the global consciousness for over a decade now. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
It really has.
And this isn't just about, recounting the events. Our aim today is to really unpack the timeline, understand the key people involved, dissect the many theories, and analyze the intense media and public reaction.
Absolutely. And the Netflix documentary, too, and just the ongoing impact of this incredibly sad and still unresolved situation.
Exactly.
The vanishing of 3-year-old Madeleine McCann from her bed in Portugal, May 2007. Her parents just yards away. It just exploded. It became probably the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history.
It really felt like that, didn't it? A complete watershed moment in how these cases are covered.
Yeah, definitely. And it continues to raise these huge questions. Safety, the investigation itself, the power of the media, public scrutiny. It's all there.
So our mission today, I suppose, is to explore why this case gripped everyone so tightly and what the enduring mysteries really tell us. Let's start right at the beginning, the evening of May 3rd, 2007. That night, Madeleine disappeared. Those first hours are always so critical.
They really are. So that evening, Kate and Jerry McCann, they put their 3 kids, Madeleine, nearly 4, and the 2-year-old twins, Sean and Emily, they put them to bed around 8 p.m. in apartment 5A.
Right. Madeleine was in a proper bed and the twins in travel cots, all in the same room.
Correct. And there was another empty single bed in there, too, just
Oh.
painting the full picture of the room itself.
And then the parents, Kate and Jerry, they went to join friends for dinner. This was their routine, wasn't it? At the Tapas bar nearby.
Yeah, about 50, maybe 60 yards away. You had to walk past the swimming pool to get there. And yeah, they did this pretty much every night of the holiday. It became a huge point of focus later on.
Understandably, they had a check system, didn't they? Going back every half hour or so.
That was the plan. And to avoid making noise, they left the patio door at the back of the apartment unlocked. Curtains were closed, but the door itself wasn't locked.
Because the front door was noisy.
Apparently, yeah. And that patio door, crucially, could only be locked from the inside. So once you were out, you couldn't lock it behind you.
Okay, so timeline. First check around 8:55 p.m. by Matthew Oldfield, one of the friends.
Yes. Then Jerry McCann went himself about 10 minutes later, say 9 or 5 p.m. And this is interesting. He noticed the kids' bedroom door was open a bit wider than they'd left it.
But he saw the kids.
He said he saw all 3 seemingly asleep. So he just pulled the door to again, didn't go right in.
And right after that, as he's walking back.
Exactly. He bumps into another friend, Jeremy Wilkins, has a quick chat. Wilkins wasn't with their dinner group that night.
Okay.
And at the very same time, another friend from the dinner party, Jane Tanner, she's going to check on her own kids. She sees Jerry and Jeremy talking, but apparently they don't see her.
And this is where that sighting happens.
This is it. She reported seeing a man walking away from the apartments, carrying a child in pink pajamas, looking sort of limp.
Pink pajamas. Madeleine's pajamas were pink.
Exactly. At the time, Tanner didn't, immediately connect it or think it was sinister, but later, obviously, incredibly significant.
Okay, so moving on. 9:30 p.m. check. It was Kate's turn, but Matthew Oldfield offered to go again.
That's right. He went instead. And he also noted the bedroom door was slightly open. He saw the twins, but said he couldn't really see Madeleine clearly in her bed from the doorway.
Yeah.
Or tell if the window was open or shut.
The door being ajar again. Strange. Could it have been a draft? Or
something else. It's one of those persistent questions.
Okay.
Then the final check, the one that changed everything. 10 p.m., Kate McCann goes.
And she finds the bedroom door closed.
Yeah, seemingly blown shut this time. She goes in, and the window is open, the shutter raised, the twins are asleep in their cots. But Madeleine's bed is empty.
Oh, God.
And Kate's immediate reaction, her words were, they've taken her.
Instantaneous belief it was an abduction. And that's the moment the nightmare begins. She runs back to the Tapas bar, tells her friend.
Yeah, raises the alarm, panic. A frantic search starts right there, right then, just looking around the complex, hoping she just wandered off nearby.
When did the official police get involved?
Well, the local GNR, the Guardia Nacional Republicana, they were called around 10 past midnight. Then the PJ, the Policia Judiciaria, the sort of more serious crime investigators, they arrived around 1 a.m.
And the PJ investigation was initially led by Gonzalo Emerald.
That's right. He was head of the local Portamon PJ unit. And he, as we know, becomes a very, very controversial figure later on.
This detailed timeline, It just highlights the chaos of those first hours and some of those questions that still hang in the air.
Oh.
Let's talk about the key individuals, obviously starting with Madeleine herself.
Madeleine McCann, just 3 years old, almost 4, very distinctive looking. She had that small brown mark, a birthmark, on her left calf, and the unique mark in her right eye, the iris.
The coloboma. Although her dad later said it wasn't technically a defect, just a unique bit of color.
Right, a distinguishing feature nonetheless. Widely publicized, obviously, in the hopes someone would recognize her.
And her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, both doctors. Kate a GP, Jerry a cardiologist. Their background, their demeanor, it all played into how they were perceived, didn't it?
Hugely. They were articulate, professional, which sometimes worked for them, sometimes against them in the court of public opinion, especially under such intense pressure.
Then the friends. Jane Tanner with that crucial sighting.
Crucial, but also dated, the exact timing, what she saw. And Matthew Oldfield, who did 2 checks. His account of what he saw or didn't see in the room is also key.
Jeremy Wilkins, the brief chat with Jerry, pinpointing Jerry's location around that 9.15 mark.
Exactly. Provides a sort of alibi for Jerry at that specific moment, just before the 9.3 check.
And Gonzalo Amaral, the initial lead detective, his approach, and later his book, it really shaped the narrative, particularly in Portugal.
Massively. He pushed the theory of parental involvement very hard, very publicly, even after being removed from the case. It caused immense friction.
Then there was Robert Murat, the first official suspect, or Arguido.
Yes, he lived nearby with his mother. His mom reported seeing a woman acting suspiciously near the apartment block around the time. Murat was subjected to intense scrutiny.
But he was later completely cleared, wasn't he? And won significant damages.
Absolutely. Huge libel payouts from several newspapers. It's a stark reminder of how quickly speculation can ruin lives in these situations.
And now, more recently, the focus is very much on Christian Bruckner.
Yes, the German suspect, a convicted sex offender with a long criminal history, including burglaries and sexual abuse, some committed in Portugal, right around the Algarve region.
And crucially, he was known to be in or around Praia da Luz at the time Madeleine vanished.
That's what the German prosecutors assert very strongly. They point to his phone records, placing him near the Oceanside complex that night. There's a record of a 30-minute phone call received on his mobile near the complex just hours before Madeleine went missing.
And there were reports about comments he made?
Yes. A former girlfriend apparently told police he'd mentioned having a horrible job to do in Praia da Luz the next day, something that would change his life. Very chilling, if true.
Does he have an alibi?
He claims he does. He says he was with a German woman and her parents at the time. But the validity of that alibi seems to be questioned by the prosecutors.
And he was recently acquitted of other charges in Germany.
Yeah, other historical sexual offense charges alleged to have happened in Portugal. That was a separate case, legally distinct from the McCann investigation, but it obviously adds another layer of complexity. The German authorities maintain he is their prime suspect for Madeleine.
And finally, the Tapa 7, the group of friends the McCanns were dining with.
They became unwillingly thrust into the spotlight, too. Subjected to intense questioning, media speculation, even false accusations in some press reports. It shows how wide the net of suspicion and scrutiny was cast.
Okay. With that timeline and those key players laid out, let's move into the really complex part, the theories and hypotheses about what actually happened.
Right. The dominant theory, especially early on, was abduction by a stranger. And that branches out, really.
Like a planned abduction, someone watching the routine, seeing an opportunity.
Exactly. That idea gained traction because of the parents leading the children, the regularity of the checks perhaps being observed. There were also some reports, though sometimes vague, of suspicious men seen hanging around the complex in the days before.
What about the idea of a burglary gone wrong?
That's another angle within the stranger abduction theory. The thinking is maybe someone broke in intending to burgle, was disturbed by Madeleine waking up, panicked, and took her.
Though you could argue a burglar would just flee.
Typically, yes. But panic isn't rational. Or perhaps a decision was made after the initial panic. It's hard to completely rule out, though maybe less likely than a planned abduction.
And then the truly awful possibilities. Trafficking. Being sold.
Tragically, yes. Those possibilities had to be considered. Child trafficking rings, even the idea of being taken by someone who couldn't have children. The thousands of reported sightings worldwide and unconfirmed kind of speak to that lingering, desperate hope mixed with fear.
And then there's the theory she simply wandered off.
Explored early on, the patio door was unlocked. But You really have to stretch plausibility for a 3-year-old.
Yeah, opening the heavy patio door, navigating curtains, maybe closing it, getting downstairs, opening a gate, all undetected.
It seems incredibly unlikely. Possible, maybe, probable. Most investigators think not.
Which brings us to the most controversial theory, the involvement of the parents.
Deeply painful and heavily fueled, as we mentioned, by Gonçalo Amaral and parts of the Portuguese investigation. The narrative was that Madeleine died in the apartment, perhaps an accident, perhaps involving sedatives, and the abduction was staged to cover it up.
And this led to Kate and Jerry being made arguidos,
Yeah.
formal suspects.
Yes, for a period. The media scrutiny then became absolutely ferocious, accusatory, judgmental, unimaginable pressure.
What was the evidence cited for this theory, the DNA?
The DNA found in the boot of the hire car they rented weeks after Madeleine disappeared. It was complex, partial, low-level. Forensic experts, including those at the UK's Forensic Science Service, concluded it was too complex for meaningful interpretation. Basically, inconclusive. Couldn't say where it came from or when.
And the sniffer dogs, the cadaver dog and the blood dog.
Right. The dogs reportedly alerted in the apartment, on Kate's clothes, and in the hire car. But dog handler evidence is tricky. It's generally considered an intelligence tool, not conclusive proof on its own. It needs corroboration.
Which wasn't found.
No definitive forensic evidence to back up the dog alerts in a way that proved a death occurred in the apartment.
There was also talk of a plea deal being suggested.
Yes, reports surfaced that a Portuguese lawyer suggested to Kate that if she admitted Madeleine died accidentally and they hid the body, she might get a short sentence, maybe 2 years, and Jerry would walk free.
Which they rejected outright.
Vehemently. And it's important to stress, in July 2008, the Portuguese Attorney General archived the case against them, citing lack of evidence. They were officially cleared as suspects by the Portuguese authorities at that point.
And they've spent a fortune on private investigators since then, haven't they?
Reportedly over €1 million, yes. Funding the search themselves for years. Which, critics of the parental involvement theory would say, why would you fund a search for a crime you committed?
We should probably also mention Pizzagate, that awful conspiracy theory.
Yes, completely baseless, linking the disappearance to fabricated political sex rings. Just shows how wild speculation can get when there's an information vacuum. Utter nonsense, but it's spread.
And finally, the current main theory, Christian Bruckner.
Back to the German suspect. Prosecutors there state they have concrete evidence he killed Madeleine. They base this on his known presence, his phone activity, his previous convictions for similar crimes against children and burglaries in the area.
But still no formal charges relating specifically to Madeleine.
Not yet. Jurisdictional issues between Germany and Portugal have been cited. And importantly, they haven't revealed any direct forensic evidence like DNA definitively linking Bruckner to Madeleine herself or the apartment. That seems to be the missing piece for charges, perhaps.
And his recent acquittal on those other charges in Portugal complicates things further, presumably.
Legally, yes. Though the German prosecutors remain confident in their assessment regarding Madeleine, it's still very much an active line of inquiry.
The media reaction, it was just off the charts, wasn't it?
Oh, completely unprecedented, really. Sustained intense global coverage. Some compared it to the aftermath of Princess Diana's death in terms of media frenzy, especially in the UK.
And so much of it turned negative towards the McCanns.
Particularly in the tabloids, and then spilling onto social media, which was becoming more powerful then. Twitter, forums. The #McCann hashtag was relentless and often incredibly hostile. Accusations flew.
Leading to libel cases.
Yes. Express newspapers had to pay substantial damages to the McCanns and the Top of Seven and issue prominent apologies for false allegations. It showed the real harm caused by irresponsible reporting.
The McCanns even testified at the Leveson inquiry into press standards in the UK.
They did. A very powerful moment, sharing their experiences of media intrusion and inaccuracies, advocating for better regulation.
Social media was a real minefield then.
Absolutely. On one hand, a tool for spreading awareness, sharing posters. On the other, a breeding ground for the most vile abuse, conspiracy theories, even threats against the family. It really highlighted the dark side of instant, unregulated communication.
And Emerald's book didn't help the McCanns situation.
No. His book, alleging their involvement, was a bestseller in Portugal. It led to that long libel battle they initiated. They won initially, but then lost on appeal in Portugal's Supreme Court.
Why did they lose the appeal?
The court didn't rule that Amaral's claims were true, but rather that because the initial police file archiving hadn't definitively proved their innocence, just lack of evidence to prosecute, Amaral had a right to publish his theory. A complex legal point, but Devastating for the McCanns.
Kate McCann wrote her own book, Madeleine.
She did, partly to counter Amaral's narrative, partly to keep the case public, and significantly to raise funds for the private investigation, which was costing a huge amount.
And Robert Murat also received large libel payouts.
Yes, from numerous British newspapers, reinforcing just how damaging that initial incorrect focus on him had been.
There was a difference in tone between Portuguese and British media, too, wasn't there?
Often, yes. Some Portuguese outlets seemed more skeptical of the McCanns from early on. Maybe cultural differences played a part, attitudes towards leaving children, public displays of grief, perhaps a bit of resentment at the huge British media presence.
Then, much later, in 2019, Netflix released that big documentary series.
The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. 8 parts. It brought the case right back into the mainstream conversation globally.
It covered a lot of ground, the timeline, the investigation, the media's storm.
It did. But notably, the McCann family themselves didn't participate. They actually asked others not to as well.
Why was that?
They felt it wouldn't help the search, might even hinder it, and potentially re-traumatize their other children. They seemed to feel it wouldn't offer anything new that was actually useful to finding Madeleine.
Who did participate?
A real mix. Former investigators like Amaral, journalists who'd covered it for years, people involved with Murat's side of things, private investigators. Lots of different perspectives.
What was the reaction to the series?
Pretty mixed, actually. Some people found it a useful, comprehensive summary if they weren't familiar with all the twists and turns. Others felt it was, frankly, too long, a bit bloated, rehashed old ground, and maybe sensationalized things without adding any real new insight or breakthrough.
So, despite all this time, all the attention, the search goes on, what's happening now?
Well, the official UK police investigation, Operation Grange, launched by Scotland Yard back in 2011, is technically still active, though scaled back.
That's cost millions every.
Millions of pounds, yes. An enormous undertaking. They reviewed everything from the start, translated vast numbers of Portuguese documents, investigated thousands of leads and sightings, interviewed hundreds of people. They generated age-progressed images, looked into persons of interest. Just a huge amount of police work trying to find a thread. Funding has been extended year after year, showing a continued commitment, at least historically.
And the German investigation into Brickner.
That seems to be the main focus now. German prosecutors remain convinced he's responsible. But those jurisdictional hurdles between Germany and Portugal and the apparent lack of direct forensic link to Madeleine seem to be delaying formal charges related to her disappearance. It's complex, legally.
There's thousands of sightings over the years.
Heartbreakingly, none have ever been confirmed. Every single one investigated, every single one leading nowhere concrete. Imagine the emotional roller coaster for the family.
Kate and Jerry McCann, they're still actively campaigning, aren't they?
Absolutely. Remarkable resilience. They continue to work to keep Madeleine's disappearance in the public eye, managing the official Find Madeleine Fund, hoping for that one piece of information. They've also spoken about the impact on the twins, Sean and Emily, trying to give them a normal life despite this constant shadow.
It's a case that just doesn't fade away, does it? The public interest is still huge.
It really is. It highlights so much the challenges of cross-border investigations, the power of the media, the dangers of trial by public opinion, and just the raw pain of not knowing.
Those anniversaries must be incredibly difficult. The 10th anniversary was a big marker.
They spoke about the stolen time, didn't they? They still mark her birthday every year, mark Christmas. That sense of loss, of a missing part of their family, is ever present.
So, wrapping this up, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann remains just, profoundly complex, emotionally charged, and without any definitive answers.
Absolutely. We've walked through the timeline, the key people, the swirling theories. The media storm around it was and is a phenomenon in itself.
The ongoing investigation, especially focusing on Christian Bruckner, it offers some potential for resolution, maybe, but huge hurdles clearly remain.
Yeah, the legal complexities, the evidence needed, it's not straightforward. And the case starkly illustrates those difficulties in international police work, balancing the need for justice with different countries' legal processes.
Ultimately, we're left with so many unanswered questions and just this deep sense of empathy for the family living with this uncertainty for so long.
It makes you think about the vulnerability of children, doesn't it? And that enduring, almost primal hope that someday, somehow, the truth will come out, whatever that truth may be.
It's a case that really has touched so many people and just reminds you of that enduring pain of unresolved loss.
A constant, sad reminder.
Thank you for joining us in the Shadows and Crimes podcast. If you like this, then please share and subscribe. See you soon.